This conference will now be recorded.
So now coming back, right? So about the stored procedures and what is the difference between a stored procedure and a function and all this stuff. So let so stored procedures you just it's also called an API application program interface. You can write a procedure which can connect to Snowflake, which you are executing, and then execute the queries, do a DML operations. You can do all kinds of stuff using Snowflake, these procedures. So most of the migration that you do, right, when you are having some procedures in the source, if they have packages or procedures, they are converted as procedures into Snowflake. Okay, so there are two languages that you can implement the procedures. One is SQL, the other one is JavaScript. SQL, create a replace procedure and write a DDL, DML based on it, it will execute it. But most of the procedures are executed using JavaScript. Okay, so difference between stored procedures, UDFs. So the UDF can be part of a SQL, or it should be part of a SQL. Select and then, or it should have. You can use it in conjunction with the table or with the column, or just select the function name. That should be good enough. But when you want to run a call a procedure, right, you have to use the keyword call procedure name, and procedure cannot be part of any SQL. Okay, and values written. So the values the procedure can optionally return a value. It might return a value. It doesn't need to return a value. If it returns a value that you cannot use it in SQL statement, you have to get it into a variable, and then from that variable you have to use part of a SQL statement. You cannot directly use the procedure in a SQL statement. Okay, and stored procedures can access the database and issue nested queries via API. So you can connect. So whenever you write a procedure, right, you can execute multiple SQL statements. You can query, get the result set, and you can loop through the result set. You can insert, update, delete. You can do all kinds of stuff using procedures. Okay. Okay. And so there are two things when you create a procedure. You can create a procedure using a caller right and a owner right. Okay. So there are two. So that means you are telling the procedure how do we execute that procedure basically. Okay. A caller write stored procedure runs with the privileges of the caller. That means whenever you run that procedure, whomever you have given the privileges, he will run the procedure, and then it runs with the privileges of that particular procedure. It uses its own caller's virtual warehouse, caller session variables, caller's session parameters, and all this stuff. So the primary advantage is, right, the procedure is that it can access information about the caller or about the caller's current session. So what is session variable means? Is it commit auto commit true or not? There are a lot of show parameters, and then for user, right, it shows all the user based parameters or variables. You can create a variable, set variable, and get the and use that variable so that that can be used. You can call use that variable inside a procedure, and then you can set the user can set a value for a variable, and then that can be executed. Okay, these are caller rights. Owner rights. Mostly owner has the privileges to run that so the owner has the privileges to access the objects, That means he can insert, update, delete on the table, but the caller might not have the DML activity on the table. The work of DML activity can be delegated by writing a procedure. For example, if you want to do a um, salary hike, right? Instead of whomever is the admin, instead of he doing the salary hike, he can write a procedure and somebody has to call this procedure, it automatically does that. Or you have some archiving program or a purge program. That means so you can, what do you call, you can delete some data in a table. But you don't have the privileges to delete, but you can pass on to delete from for the past week data. You figure out that there is too much of data on the table, and for the past week, if you want to delete that data, you can use by writing a procedure. Okay. See, the primary advantage of owners right stored procedure is that owner can delegate specific administrative tasks such as cleaning up old data to another role without granting the role more privileges, more general privileges such as privileges to delete all data from a specific table. So you are writing a procedure, and normally what happens is if you are so if you want to do any insert, update, delete operations on a particular table. If you don't have the privileges on the table, you just call a procedure and pass the parameters, which in turn creates a table, deletes the record. So you will have that. So you are delegated the activity using a procedure, that kind of stuff. Okay. Little more details of the caller rights. So the caller rights procedure adhere to the following rules within the session. Run with the privilege of the caller, not the privilege of the owner. This we know. Inherit the current warehouse of the caller. So whatever the warehouse of the caller has chosen, that is the one. Use the database and schema that the caller is currently using. Yes, when you grant the privileges, you have to give on which particular database, which particular schema your object is, and when he's trying to execute, he has to call the database name and the schema name where this particular procedure is. Okay, can view, set, and unset the caller session variables. So if session variables are being used, we can use the session variables and parameters. Parameters is like auto commit and all this stuff. We use the one, right? Show parameters for current user. I forgot the syntax. For user. So this is the user that you are trying to use, and these are all the parameters for the user. So for user, yes, and basically for user shows the current user what it has and all this stuff. Show parameters for, there is another thing, account level for account. I think see the account level parameter. You can set up a parameter for the user. You can set up an account level. Account level by default is carried forward to the user, and you can still bypass the user level parameter. Okay, these are the parameters. Variables means you are setting up set x is equal to 10. This is the variable that you are trying to set. Okay. Then view, set, unset the caller session parameters, session variables. Variables is the x, y, z that you are trying to set up. Okay. And then owner rights. Run with the privileges of the owner, not the privilege of the caller. Inherit the current values of the caller. It still inherits the current values of the caller. Use the database and schema that stored procedure is created in, not the database and schema that the caller is currently using. It comes to the database when you are trying to execute as a owner, right? You should have You should log into that particular database and schema and then execute it. Cannot access most caller specific information. For example, cannot view, set, or unset the caller's session variables. When you are trying to run as a owner, right, you cannot use the caller's session variables. So I have an example somewhere. Hold on 1 second. Yes. Yeah, this is the one. Execute as caller, execute as owner. I forgot to add this in my examples. That is the reason I'm just showing you. So when you say execute as caller, then somebody else will be trying to run this tree. Execute as owner means you will be running it. So if you look at this, right, we can have this procedure. I do have this example, but I okay. We will run this. We'll set this up. Okay, hold on. So execute as caller, execute as owner. There are the two differences. And when you create the procedure, when you say execute as owner, the owner's your warehouse will be used. Still, it has all the you cannot make use of most of the session variables that you want to use. You are running as if you are owner kind of thing. That is execute as owner. Execute as caller means you are caller and you can handle all the session variables, session parameters, everything, and then you have much more independence when you're trying to run. But the privileges on inserting, updating, deleting is all part of the owner, not you. Only you can make use of some session variables, and also you have a little more freedom to execute privileges with your, so you can customize it basically. Understood? Okay. And then coming back to the other one. So, and there are some places where when you are trying to query the metadata, right? And the metadata is only respective to the user, whichever the user that's running, it returns the result of that particular user only. And whenever you are using that particular query in your procedure, then it's going to fail because you cannot run it as a owner privilege. It has to be the user specific, right? So that's what it is. So cannot access most caller specific information. For example, cannot view, set, or answer the caller session variables, can read only specific session parameters like, and cannot set or unset of the caller session parameters. So most of the time we cannot set caller session parameters. Cannot query information schema table functions such as automatic clustering history that returns results based on the current user. So some of the information schema functions, they are based on the current user, and when you use that in your procedure, and if you create a procedure with owner rights, right, then it will fail because that particular metadata query only runs as part of a user. Okay, if you don't want to allow non-owners to view information about the procedure from procedures view. Okay, this is one more thing, security part of it. Okay. How do you create a procedure? Create stored procedure, create procedure, alter procedure, drop procedure, describe procedure, show procedures, call procedure. Okay. And when we were talking about this clustering, right? We talked about clustering. Do you remember? I'm just jumping my topic because I forgot to mention one point to you at that point of time. So I just want to reiterate that. So how many uh, clustering keys that you can create on a table?
Multiple keys we can create, sir.
How many clusters can you create on a table then?
Only one cluster per table.
Yeah, if
But
I want to
multi,
create multiple, see, for example, I have a table
of course.
which uses by two departments, finance department and then audit department. Audit
Yeah.
department looks at column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 6. And finance department looks at column 21, column 30, column 4, column 29, so and so. So each of them have their own things. So if you
But we
create a
can
cluster on a table
we can include all
with
the
column
columns.
1, 2, 3, sorry?
We can include all the columns in the single cluster.
No, that doesn't help you much, right? The performance, if you include 13 columns, right, that becomes, it's not more efficient. You don't get that performance.
Yeah.
See, order management team, you can create a cluster on a table with column 1, 2, 3, 4, and then whenever the queries are executed, the data is fetched very fast. But finance team, they use different columns. And even if you include them, right, you should include 5 to 6 columns, and then the order also varies, right? So you
Yeah. Yeah.
have first order management and then the finance related columns, then they don't get much of a performance. How do you resolve this kind of issue? The queries on finance department are very, very slow. They're taking a lot of time. How do you resolve this?
Increase the cluster size, resizing.
We are going to burn credits. You can still do that. There is one option before getting it. So if you can create a cluster on the table, but you cannot create more than one cluster. So
Yeah.
the other option is, right, you can create a materialized view and you can create a cluster on the materialized view. On materialized views, you can create a cluster. So you create a cluster on the material. So you create a materialized view. That is nothing but the data that you wanted for the finance department, right? You fetch from the table, or you can create all the columns and then create a materialized view, and then you create a cluster on the materialized view, so that the finance department goals are also satisfied. But the offside of it, the negative of it or the con of it is, right, you will have additional storage and you have the storage charge, the compute charges because maintaining the materials. This is one option I forgot to tell you on the other day. You can use material views. If you have a table, you can create only one cluster key on a table with multiple columns. And if you want to create another cluster key, you create a material view on the same table and you create a cluster key on the material view. Are we good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then coming back, I forgot to tell you this on the other day. So the first thing we normally do in the implementation of procedure and API, they call it as API enables you to perform operations such as API is nothing but a code that you write in a procedure. Execute a statement, retrieve the results of a query, retrieve metadata of the result sets. Like so, when you say select start from a table name, if you don't know what kind of data type is it, you can read the metadata of the results set and sizes of the column that you are trying to do, what kind of data type and size of this. This can be read from the metadata. Okay. And then normally what happens, right? This is the JDBC part of it that we are trying to analyze here. Etc. So normally in JDBC, we are using the same thing here because JavaScript procedures, right? Executing query via statement updating a query via statement, creating a statement, and all this stuff. So what is a statement? Statement is nothing but an object, and it has methods. It can the statement is like an object which has methods, means you can it has more than one operation that you can do. Statement dot execute, statement dot create, statement dot get SQL text. So there are different this method have different usages. Something like, if you look at this particular statement, right? Statement a variable, you're trying connection dot create statement. That means first thing is, right, we are from the connection means this is the JDBC connection. You can connect to any database which can implement Java database connectivity, and then you are telling connection dot create statement. Create a statement, create this particular thing. This is the way that you create. If you want to execute a SQL query, you should have a statement, and the statement can execute a query. Okay, if you look at it, right, this is the SQL query, and then statement dot execute query, and this one. So statement has the method called execute query. First you have to create a statement. That means you are telling that you are trying to create a SQL statement, and that particular SQL statement can be executed. Statement dot execute. That is the result sets. While result set dot next means if the result has values, then get column 1, column 2, column 3. This all the stuff that you have. So there are two statements in Java JDBC. This is a regular statement and a prepared statement. So the prepared statement can update rows. Insert any DML activity can be done with the prepared statement. You can still do update, execute update, and then you can do that as. And you have to close this one statement. The JDBC API, that is the reason they call it as API in Snowflake, because they implement the application program interface that is part of the JavaScript or JDBC. So the procedures that you are writing mostly is of JDBC API only. So when you are trying to use the prepared statement, right, it can have parameters inserted into SQL statement so that the prepared statement can be reused. That means you can make use of, where is that example?
Sir, we don't need to have knowledge of JavaScript, right, for writing the procedures and that. Only JDBC knowledge is enough.
You should have the knowledge of JDBC part of JavaScript, not the entire JavaScript. And whenever
Okay.
you're working on dates, you need some how the dates are treated and how the functions are treated in if you are trying to write a regex function, regular expression function, how they are
Mm.
used in JavaScript, right? You can Google it and figure out.
Yeah, yeah.
Not too much complex of it.
Okay.
So if you are, this is the prepared statement, and you are able to pass parameters to it, 1, 2, 3. So here you can use one single statement and you can parameterize the SQL. Performance of the application will be so. In our JavaScript, the prepared statement are all mixed together. It's only one thing. I'm just trying to give you some clarity about what an API, how API works in the JDBC part of it. First, you have to create a statement using the connection, and here in our Snowflake, we to create a statement, right? We say Snowflake dot create statement. There in JDBC we use connection. So the connection means you have to have a. I'll show you an example of JDBC. So this is Java database connectivity with MySQL. First, you have to have a driver class. That means you have to import a jar. There is a zip file that you have, because when you want to connect to MySQL will have a library, and you have to import that zip file. Okay, connection to, and then it has parameters, the username and the database name and password and where is the server located and all this stuff. This is what how the connection looks like. Localhost means this one or the server name, the port, and then the database username, password. Okay, so this is how you write. You are trying to import the library here. Okay, connection driver manager dot get connection. The JDBC call. This is the syntax that you have to pass. If you want to connect to MySQL, you have to pass the server name, port name, and the database name, and the username and password. Then you will connect to MySQL. Once you have the connection, right? Connection dot create statement. Here you are explicitly connecting to a MySQL. In our procedure, you don't need to explicitly connect because we are already in the Snowflake environment. You can just Snowflake dot create statement. It creates a statement for you. Statement dot execute, it executes the statement. Statement dot execute query, it executes. While result set, and then if you want to, normally you have to put this in try catch. That means if you want to handle the exceptions, right? You want to have that in a try. That means it might throw an exception. This is the exception logic that you normally handle in. We use the same similar thing in JavaScript as well. So you understood how things work in JDBC, right? Now let's come back to our see. So in an interview, when they ask you, right, they'll ask you, how do you execute have you worked on stored procedures? Yes, yes. What kind of stored procedures? SQL and JavaScript. How do you write a JavaScript stored procedure? Yeah, you have to create a statement, and then you have to execute the statement by passing the query, and then you have to get the results, loop to the result sets, and do whatever you want. You have to tell these three things. Execute a SQL statement, it is the result sets of the query, and then it is a result sets, and then you can make use of the metadata as well. These operations can be carried out by calling methods on the following objects. So Snowflake, which has a method to create statement. Here, connection dot create statement. Here is Snowflake. Snowflake has a method. Snowflake dot create statement which helps you to execute prepared statements and access metadata for those prepared statements and allows you to get back result set object. And then so result set, which were the results of the query. I'll show you an example. SFDate, which is an extension of JavaScript date with additional methods and serves as a return type for this. So here there is no date parameter that you can in JavaScript. If you're working on timestamps and dates and all this stuff, right? There is a separate data type called SFDate, Snowflake date, which is an extension of JavaScript date. So there is nothing but it has little more extensibility of JavaScript regular date with additional and serves as a return type for the Snowflake. That means if you are trying to return a date, you cannot return a date in the procedure. You have to return SF date, which internally converts into SQL date. So when we talk about SQL null and then the JavaScript null, that means the null in JavaScript is different. It's called undefined. The null in SQL is pure null. When a null is sent to the JavaScript function and procedure, it is treated as undefined. I was trying to show you in the morning, right? I forgot to work on that. I'll send out whenever I send out the query, right? I'll fix it and send it out so that you can understand how undefined works. Okay. So when you are trying to return dates of different date types, right? Like local time zone, no time zone, a time zone, the SF date will help you. Okay. Okay. And then the other thing is right, transaction management. So you can commit you cannot commit inside the procedure, but you can begin and then commit. So if you want to, we have seen in streams, right? If you want to log the transaction, or if you want to have something update or rollback happen, which is part of the transaction, then you have to write like this: begin. You should have a semicolon after begin as well, and then some statement or call this procedure executes, and then some other statement and commit. So you cannot have insert inside a procedure. Transaction control commands begin, commit, or rollback are not allowed inside a stored procedure. So if you want to commit, say for example, if you're trying to do a procedure and if something fails, you don't want to do a commit onto that. You want to roll back the entire transaction. So you might have a scenario either you do the thing right, and if there is an error, don't insert any data into the table. You roll back and then come out. So I'm assuming that you guys know what is a commit and rollback, right? So if you don't want to have a commit, if you run into any transaction error in the transaction, then if you want to do this, you have to write like this and call this procedure, and then if this procedure returns an error, based on that, if you want to commit. If you don't want to commit, and then you can roll back. So if you stored procedure is called outside an explicit transaction, that it means you call multiple times, the query that the code that get executed is a separate session altogether. Then each statement inside the stored procedure executes as a separate transaction. So each of them are independent transaction inside a procedure. And whenever you use DDL statements inside your procedure, right, it automatically commits before the previous. See, for example, in your procedure you have written insert and update and delete, and then you are trying to create a table, a temporary table or whatever it is. The moment you create a temporary table, right, all the DML that you have done in that particular transaction automatically gets committed, because whenever you run execute a DDL, if there are pending DML activities in that session, they get committed. So you have to make sure when you're trying to do a DDL, make sure it's basically your business scenario, right? And if you say rollback also, it cannot roll back, because you have created a table and you have DDL command like alter or drop or truncate. If you have done any of the DDL commands after a couple of DML actions, then those DML actions by default will get committed. And if you later try to get an error, if you want to roll back, that the rollback cannot happen, it's already committed. You're able to follow me, guys? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. But
Sorry.
DDL statement doesn't require any commitness, sir.
No, DDL by default is a commit thing, right? So
Yeah.
in your procedure, you have done an insert, and then you have done truncate on a table, not necessarily the same table where you have inserted. Still, all the three inserts that you have done, they're automatically committed. Even though if your auto commit is false and you want to commit after the procedure is done, implicitly commits the pending transactions, and then it does the DDL command.
Like before DDL statement, even if you write 1 lakh statement also related to DML, without begin and commit, it will get committed inside, right?
Yes, it commits automatically.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and then so how do you call a stored procedure? Call stored procedure. You can, when you are trying to pass that, you can convert it into a different data type. So you can do expressions, multiplications inside the stored procedure. And you can pass the SQL query as parameter to the stored procedure. Select count star from this particular table. And you can call only one stored procedure. You cannot call proc1, proc2, not allowed. Call proc1 plus proc2 not allowed. Call proc1 plus not allowed. And you cannot have the results return statement of another procedure passed as a parameter to other one. That cannot be done. And you can use it as part of the SQL. Okay. So what are the privileges that you can give on a statement? Usage, ownership. So this is what we have talked restrictions and stored procedure, right? Transaction control. You cannot use bring it, commit, rollback inside the stored procedure. That means when you execute, the entire stored procedure is executed as single transaction. All of them is part of one session kind of thing, basically. Okay. And the JavaScript cannot call JavaScript eval function. There is an evaluation function. You can pass parameters to it to evaluate which true or false. This particular eval function cannot be used in the. So this is a default JavaScript function, not the Snowflake flavored JavaScript. So you cannot use the default eval function. In the JavaScript, right, you can import regular JavaScript, import third-party libraries. So in Snowflake, you cannot import third-party libraries. For example, if you're in a web page, you are trying to create a framework table or the results of a particular dashboard. You are trying to create some frames where your data should sit and all this stuff, right? That you can create, use a third-party library and then use them in your JavaScript. You can import a library and you can use that methods of the library to pass and do all kinds of stuff. Or if you want to do some calculations, you can import a third party library and do some calculation. That is not possible in Snowflake. So you can do recursive calling of JavaScript procedure, but there is some limit. You can do up to current max stack depth is approximately 8. This is wrong. It is 5 only. If you pass the sixth one, it fails. And how come I get 8? I'll just leave it like this. So in rare cases, calling too many stored procedures at the same time because one is updating, you're calling the same stored procedure somewhere, then it will also update the same table you're trying to run. So it might run into deadlock. You have to kill the sessions. That means the table is locked. One session is trying to update, and there is another session also trying to update. Unless until this update is done, it won't release. So that is called a deadlock scenario. So if you run into, if you parallelly running, it's a rare case, parallel running too many procedures on the same table, updating the same table and all this stuff, you might run into deadlock scenarios. Okay.
Sir,
So bind
sir,
variables. This is what we
yeah,
called. Sorry.
yeah, according to this, we need to have begin and commit, right? Surely for procedure. Then only the
Yeah.
transaction will
Normally
get
it's
commit, right?
so it depends upon your business use case, right? If you don't worry about auto commit, you can just keep on running the data. And if you are much more session specific, what data that you are putting into table, if there is any dependency, if you are working on it, so the you have inserted some data in the parent table. Now you are trying to insert some data into the child table, and or you are trying to insert some data in the child table, and then you have to have an entry in the parent table. If you have this kind of relationship, and then you are trying to handle this kind of business logic, right? If something one fails, then the other records become orphan or they don't have any children. So you that's based purely based on the business logic how you want to implement it, right? If you run into any scenarios like this, and if you want your enter data to be clean and neat, it cannot be partial, then you have to roll back, then you have to write the procedure in such a way such that the data is entirely inserted, or if not, you roll back that. So you make sure you keep the session parameter auto commit false, and then begin, call your procedure, and if the procedure returns an error, and then do rollback. Are you able to follow me?
Yes, sir. But if it is successful, then we can go for commit, right?
Yeah. Show parameters like. So auto commit, right? By default is true. Then you can say alter session set. This, if you look at this, right? So if you're calling from a different client, like a Python or any other third-party client, right? You can set the auto commit for the client also. The Snowflake, this, what is this? What is clipboard? Oh, let me come back. Equal to false. So if you go look at it, right? Now this is auto commit is false. Now what I'm gonna do, begin, call my proc, and then I'm just trying to write the pseudo code guys here. Then
But we can write in try catch buckle, right? That one also.
no, that is, you cannot use the commit or rollback, right? So this is what it is. So you cannot write the if else condition, and then you have to use, if there is an error, then only you have to roll back. If not, commit. That you have to do that. I'll send you a sample code for you to look at this particular thing as well. So if you want to, based on the error of the procedure, if you want to handle the commit, I'll send you a sample code as well. You remind me if I forget to send you, right? Ping me on the WhatsApp. I'll send it to you. This might come handy when you're working in your working environments. Okay. So how do you use binding variables? So normally what happens, right? Whenever you are trying to write this insert statement, let me tell you. If you are inserting some data into a table, insert into EMP values, and then first one is employee name. How do you write employee name? When you're trying to build the SQL like this, right? Then you have to write Shaker. For example, you're only writing EMPNO, comma, ename. These are the only two values. Then I'll say 100, comma. This is the regular SQL statement that you use. But as part of the procedure, right? You might have these two as parameters. Param 1 and then param 2. So something like create a replace procedure, param 1 number is short, param 2 string, returns string. Okay. as language JavaScript as $, and then you have to create the statement, and then this is the sequel. Okay, and when you say param 1 and param 2, you have to build like this. Plus param 1 plus, so plus param 2 plus. So this is how you have to write, because you have to dynamically build the SQL statement if you want to run this. So insert into emp number values, and this is the param. Then this SQL statement you have to see statement dot execute and all this stuff. I'll show you the example. But when you come to this particular scenario, right? So this is the param one. So I have write param one, and this is param two. But when you're trying to write this, the employee number is number, so you don't need, it's fine. But for e-name, whenever trying to insert, how do you write the e-name? You have to put it in quotes, then you have to write single quote and then plus single quote. Then only the SQL, the insert statement is valid for you. Whenever it tries to execute your statement, it looks for a valid SQL statement as if you are executing in a worksheet or SQL. It has to be the same way. And if you don't give the parameters like codes, right, it will fail, it cannot understand. I am having a character value column name, and you are not putting characters codes in front of the column. Are you able to follow me, guys? Yes or no?
Yes, sir. But generally, in real time, we don't insert like this, right? We will insert only with the other tables, right? Maximum.
Sorry, come again.
We insert the data into the other tables, either by staging tables or some other table. Tables only will insert, right? We don't get into the
No, no, you might be
parameter.
using all kinds of stuff. It depends upon your business case, right? You might
Yeah.
be insert. So if you are delegating this procedure to somebody to insert, then you insert the data in a table. But while you are inserting, right, it, so the statement that you're building, the SQL statement, it should be as if you write the statement outside in a worksheet, it should mimic the same thing, then only your statement gets executed. So if you're writing an insert statement, right, then you don't, then you have to look at it whether it's a string, and if it's a string you have to put quotes and all this stuff. To avoid this kind of nuisance, right, what we can do, we can use this bind variable. Insert into table column 1 column 2 values question mark, and then for this, in the order in which you are writing, you say value 1 variable 2 or parameter 1 param 2. So you don't need to have the codes, single codes, plus you don't need to build the SQL statement in a way. When you use bind variables, it automatically replaces the variables, and then if it's a codes, you can put codes here. If not, if it is a string, it automatically converts into a string. It manages its own thing. And this can be done like this. If you want to binds, is much more advantageous for you. You can write the same thing like this. Insert into emp table values, and then you don't need to worry about code, single code that you are trying to add this and all this, right? Like here you can say param 1. You don't even give the codes as well here. Param 2. It automatically identifies what kind of data type is it. It puts single quotes while your execution and all this stuff. Much more easy. This is called binding. Okay. I have all the examples for it. So you can create a dynamic SQL. That means this is what a dynamic SQL is. You're trying to build, what is it? This is the dynamic SQL. You're trying to build a SQL statement dynamically, and then you can execute this particular, or based on the parameter. If you are inserting into it, select star from, and the table name you can pass. You can, if you want to count the number of rows for a table that you pass it as a parameter, you can build a dynamic SQL as well. So these are all the examples that you have to see. Examples: execute query and loop through. These are the examples that I have right now. While I'm going to show you variable example, binds example, dynamic example, recursive stored procedure, try catch example, custom exception, logging an error, and different. So these are all the examples that we are going to see right now. These are all the exercises that we are going to do right now on the procedures.
Sir, one doubt
ETFs we have
actually.
already taken care, right? So this is not something. So yes,
Hello.
Vikram.
Yeah. Sir, here the Snowflake procedures
Yeah,
is
Vikram. Go ahead.
almost almost all similar like PLSQL procedures only, right? I'm actually feeling that.
No, no, I'm losing you. I lost. I was not able to hear you properly. Can you repeat
Yeah,
that
I'm
again?
saying that.
Little louder, please.
Can you hear me now?
Hmm.
So what I'm saying is like I have worked on Oracle procedure. So what I have seen here is as we are explaining, it seems almost all the features are similar to this Oracle procedures only, like PLSQL procedures. So most of the concepts are covering here, right?
Yes, but you might not have cursors. Cursors are not
Okay.
there in JavaScript procedures. You have to write the same, execute the SQL statement, loop through these results, and then try to. So something similar. The procedure languages are almost similar. Then when you are trying to migrate Oracle to Snowflake, and if you want to migrate your procedures, then you have to build in JavaScript. Similarly, that whatever I'm showing that to you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So these are the procedures. Let's go look at the examples. Okay. So SQL command statement. This is what we talked about. It Snowflake dot create statement. Select. So this is the SQL that you are trying to use, and you can pass this SQL to the create statement. Create statement, and then so now you are creating. You're telling Snowflake that you're about to execute this particular SQL statement, and statement one dot execute. Statement can take call a method called create statement, and then take the SQL text as a parameter, or you can directly write SQL text here as well, like, and then execute. Okay, you can write delete from so and so, and then you can execute that. So this so and create statement MySQL command execute. So you create a statement and then passing the SQL text to it, and you can execute, or you can directly execute Snowflake dot execute. Instead of creating a statement, you can directly execute. And SQL text, this is the syntax you have to follow. Select count from double quotes, then it executes. Instead of creating a statement, passing the SQL statement, and executing statement, you can directly Snowflake dot execute. Snowflake dot execute. And you can Snowflake dot create statement, and then you can use dot execute as well. This is another way. Now there are a couple of ways of handling things. Snowflake dot execute and pass a SQL text, which SQL that you want to execute, or Snowflake dot create statement, and for the create statement you can pass the text and then say execute as well. So these are the other options that you have. The first thing is, right, how do you query a table and then get the values?
Sir, if select statement returns the billions of records, then the variable value will hold it, all the 1 billion
Select,
records.
Hold on 1 second. I have some issue with my Wi-Fi. I'm going to change the Wi-Fi. Hold on. Guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear him. Yeah,
So what's the question?
yeah, I was asking you, if a select statement returns 1 million records, whatever the variable you are using there, var result equal to something, that result will hold all 1 million records.
Yeah, definitely. But and it's memory consumption, right? So you have to
Yeah,
be optimal. Why are you getting 1 million records and then storing it? And it fetches it. As I said, it keeps on fetching the data, but it's not a nice way of writing things, right? There are some
yeah,
memory implications and procedure because there's a JavaScript part of it, and as I told you, there are memory implications of it. Okay. So before getting this right, I'm trying to create this function. Read result set, right? So I have already created one for you guys. So here, whenever you're trying to look at this data, right? The column one, column two, you cannot output this anywhere on the screen or anything. So that is not there. Snowflake is still maturing on this particular front. So you cannot output this particular thing. So how do you have to output? You have to insert into your table. So how do you insert into your table? You can write for each and every statement for the value that you got here, right? So get column value 1, and then you have to insert this column value 1 into a table. And if you're trying to insert, then that becomes a SQL statement again, and you have to create a SQL statement, and you have to build that statement, and you have to execute it. Are you able to follow me? If I want to get this column 1 into a table, right, then I have to create a statement here like this. Where insert statement is equal to insert into log table values, and then question mark, or you have to say double quote, single quotes values, right? Plus single quotes column 1 plus single quotes, which should be here like this. Quote, and then you can write this. Dot execute. So now you can have this value, and if you want to put each and every value, right, you have to write too many insert statements like this. So to avoid this scenario, right, what I have done, that is in the bottom part, I have written a function or a procedure which takes the SQL statement or the value that you are passing and then inserts the error log table. Okay, so this is the call do log. This is the procedure that I have written. Let's go and look at call do log. What is procedure that we do underscore log? Okay, string, right? I have to pass string, then only it will work. Done. If you look at this, right, do log message this varchar or string whatever you do, and then it's JavaScript. I'm trying to write snowflake.create statement SQL text create table error log if not exists. If the table is not exist, then create this table not execute. Error log is the log that I wanted to use, and then insert into error log values :1 :2 instead of question mark that we use, right, we can use :1 :2, and then so date dot now I'm in this is the ts is the timestamp. I'm inserting the timestamp and then the message whatever the parameters that you pass. And if you look at this, select start from error log, right?
Date dot now is JavaScript function, right, sir?
This is JavaScript that we are trying to use. So this is the SQL select star from EMP and the query ID. I can keep on calling this particular thing and then pass on all the values. So this is an easy way of trying to log something because it doesn't spit out in any of the screen what is the value, and there is no function to look at the screen what are the values that it's trying to. So in Oracle or somewhere else you have a DBMS output or print line or something which shows in the screen, bottom screen, wherever you are trying to execute like a result set it shows. Here that is not the case, so you have to insert into a table, then only you'll get to know. Okay, let's look truncate table. Yeah, I'm truncating that. And if you come here, right, this is the SQL statement that I've written, and I have written a function called log message, and then in this message, right, I'm calling the create statement dot execute call do log. That means I'm calling another function. In the do log, it takes this particular message as parameter and keeps on inserting into the error log table. Are you able to follow me? So the moment I select star from EMP, and then this is my SQL text, my execute command, and result set 1 statement done 1 dot execute. And so this particular command, right, so it has statement 1 dot execute, right, this executes the SQL statement. What is the SQL statement? Select star from EMP, and then I have another method of statement 1 get SQL text, which gives me whatever the text that I have used for the SQL statement, it gives me the SQL text as well. Select star from EMP, this gives. So I'm telling log this particular thing. Double quotes, that's fine. So this normally like this log plus get me the result of this get SQL text. It SQL text, this is what SQL text that I have passed in. And then okay, and then update EMP set salary is equal to 1.25 where department number is equal to 10. not execute. I'm just trying to update this particular department. Okay. Statement 1.get query ID. It gives me the query ID of the previous SQL statement that I executed. And then if I want to see how many number of records has been updated, then we normally what happens if you want to see how many records are updated, we use select star from table of result scan and pass -1 or the query ID, which the update statement which gives the number of records, right? This is an interview question people normally ask. How do you identify what number of records that have been updated? And yeah, you want to uh, store that in a log table. Normally what happens, right? Whenever you're trying to procedure, there is a logging mechanism. How many number of results are there, how many records that you have updated, how many records that you have inserted. If you have to keep on inserting into a log table to understand whenever this procedure runs what happened, to debug or to know what is happening in the procedure, right? You keep on this logging mechanism. So for that particular thing to happen, right, you have to say select number of rows updated from table scan. So whenever you update this particular thing, right, okay, I'll just only one. How many rows updated, number of rows. So this is the result set. Number of rows updated, number of rows multi-giant rows updated. This is not. We are more important in this one. How do you get the results? Select from table of result underscore scan -1. Right? This gives me 12. And this is the one that I have to insert because this statement has been executed. But if you want to know what are how many number of records have been executed, then you have to come back and then where is this? See, I have written the select number of rows updated from this particular results and the previous one, and then this is the result set. Whenever you executed the result set, you are trying to when you say execute, right? You have to say dot execute, and then these semicolons are optional. If you use them, fine. If you don't use them, fine. They don't bother about you. And so I have written select number of rows updated from table and execute. Once you execute, the results are fetched into this variable. Whenever you say this select star from emp, the results are fetched into this result set whenever you execute. And you can get the select statement, you can get the query id, and here we are updating that. And then so you can loop through the records. For example, result set 1, right? While result set 1 dot next, that means if there are values in these, there are results in this select statement, select star from, right? There are many number of results. I'll say select star from emp limit 10. So it gets only 10 records, and I these loop through the results, and then get column value 1. That means first one is employee name, e-name, employee number, comma e-name, comma manager, comma hide date. All the star means you'll have all the values. I'm just getting the value 1, value 2, and putting into two values. I'm inserting log. So I'm inserting into a table. When I say log of this particular thing, it calls this function, log function, and passes the string that I'm passing it here. This column value and the column 1. That will be called by the log function, which then passes this entire message to a value which inserts into a table. Okay. Let's go ahead and
We have to give some string for that one for calling that one. That's why we are passing that
no,
column
you
one,
don't
right?
need. You can directly see. You can directly write. You don't need to give this. You can directly say log column two.
Column two means what we'll get actually.
What is the column one?
Employee number something is there.
Yeah, from EMP limit 10. This is the query that we are trying to execute. What is the first
Okay.
column? Employee number.
Employee number.
Column
Yeah.
one is employee number. E
Hmm.
name. Column two is employee two.
Yeah.
With three, employee three. Job. So how many,
Okay.
if you want, you can just keep on getting all the columns, and then if you want to insert, if you want to be based on the business logic, you can do. Here I'm inserting. So this one is to make sure that whenever you just insert only column two, right, you cannot identify what column two. So to make, if you want to make much more meaningful thing, right, you can say EMPNO, and you can say ename, which makes sense, right? You can, by looking at the data, when you query the table, error log table, you can look at that particular data and so, okay, this is the employee number, this is the ename that I got fetched from this particular thing. Okay, I'm running this procedure and then call. What is the name of the procedure?
So if you want to use
G.
those columns later in the statements, then we have to do this one, right? That's what you mean to say.
Sorry, come again.
If you want to use these columns in next statements, then we have to call this. No, my
If you want
question
to
is,
use, yeah.
no, my question is why we are calling columns here in the log function?
You mean here log column and
Yeah,
log
yeah,
this one, right?
yeah, yeah.
No, see, I have queried a table. How can I
Mm-hmm.
show you guys in the classroom that it has already queried and it inserted? Unless until you see the insert values into your table, then you can say, okay, this query is looping through and getting the values, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This is just a debug statement. I'm using this log function to pass this column value into a table, insert the value so that I can show it to you. Let me run this, you can understand. Hold on.
Okay. Mm.
So see, stored procedure execution, stored scope transaction started in stored procedure is incomplete and it was rolled back at a statement line number 4, position 81. And these things, right? They don't properly show me that. There is some double quotes thing that has messed up. Because whenever you read from the stage, right, the get DDL, it doesn't put double dollar dollar. It gets you as a single quotes. And somewhere I have messed up this double quotes. It should not be the case. So the error troubleshooting is a big pain in the neck. It doesn't properly give you. See, it says line number 4. Line number 4 is execute as owner. Nothing here. So still line number 4. Now what is line number? We don't have this particular thing, right? Now I have to go and then compile the entire thing. Dollar dollar function is fine. Gets equal text. Statement 1 dot gets equal text. There is a problem. So it doesn't understand this particular thing. This. So I have to replace this with single quotes. So to the aggregation error. It doesn't tell me where this particular. This is a big pain in the neck. It's incomplete. It was rolled back at statement dot execute line 4. Something. There is some problem here. Select star from EMP. I'm not gonna do anything. This is how you normally troubleshoot, guys. You don't know where it is. You keep on trying to go to the root of the program. We log statement get text. Statement 1 dot execute. Something is incomplete. I don't know what is incomplete. I'll take this log also out. Okay. Now it got executed. This is where the problem is. It's trying to, while result set one dot next, insert count is going to insert count as one, column one, result set one dot get. Okay. It got 41 rows. The results it looped through and how many number of records, but while it's trying to insert into this particular table, right? It's running into issue. There is some problem with this function that we are trying to call here. So test is created. Now it should work. It was something to do with the auto commit, which we did not commit with the old transaction. It's still waiting for the transaction to be done. Now it's working fine.
Sir, can you paste there the updated code in the document?
Yeah, I'll show. I'll do it. No, it has nothing to do with the code. Code is perfectly fine. We tried to. I showed you auto commit true false for that particular session. We changed the session parameters, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there was some pending transaction here, and you're trying to do some insert which is not. So I
Okay.
what happened 41 results. So while I was trying to print, right, insert count some values, insert countless one. I'm getting looping through all EMP. Select star from EMP. If you look at this, right, this is the one, right? So error log, error underscore log. We did some tests and then employee number, ename, employee number, ename, employee number, ename. So these are all what we have done. So I think this should work pretty fine here. truncate table error log. I'm calling this number of rows updated.
I think we need to commit the transaction. We ran the procedure, right?
That should be done. I've already committed it. This should
Okay,
not be
now
the case. It is having some issue with number. Invalid identifier number of rows updated. We have updated to execute. Result set snowflake.create statement. There is nothing wrong here. Select number of rows updated from table. This is the update statement. And we executed it. We got the query ID. And I'm saying -1. It was not there before. So set 2 is failing. That means this particular SQL is not executed. Result set 2 dot next means we have to execute this. Dot execute. I take this out and the star. So it has some issue with the value. So we got only one record. Select star from. So this is my select statement. Select star from EMP. We got statement 1 dot get query text, right? It gave me the select statement. The query ID we got it. And then the same thing, number of rows updated is null. Ename 0 and then employee number 12, employee name. So there is some mess up happened here. One second, guys. Result set rows updated. Department number 10 is not there. Update EMP set salary equals where department number is equal to 10. Query ID. Oh, this has nothing to do with this. Create statement and then after the execution, right? Execute. We are trying to execute this. Still, there is some issue with that. Number of rows updated 12. We got 12. Employee number is 12. E-name is 0. So what are we trying to get here? Result 1 dot next. This is the one, right? Employee number result set 1 dot get column value 1. What is the column value 1? This is this result set. Hold on 1 second. I'll just take this out. Statement dot execute, and then query. Oh, we use the same result set name here. This is result set 1, which gets select star from EMP. And when you come back here, right, I'm using the same thing. Update EMP also result set. I have to make this as 2, make this 3, 3, 3.1, number of rows, etc. Okay. Now it's running. So if you make a small mistake in JavaScript procedure also, you will run into issues. You have to be very careful, troubleshoot it and all this stuff.
Where was the issue, sir?
Issue was the result set is nothing but once you execute the query, right? I'm getting into a result set, and for select star from EMP for update also, I use the same name. That was a mistake. If I can show it here, it makes sense. So what is the result select star from EMP? I'm executing and getting into statement. So this result set will have all the EMP details. And I'm using another SQL statement and getting the details to result set 1. Again, if you look at here, right, I'm having the same name here, which is wrong. Now these results are into this result set. This result set is gone. Update EMP, right? You see whenever you updated, there are 2 rows that come. Number of rows updated, multi-join update. That is the only thing that you have here. So that is the reason when you say column 1, it gave me 12, and column 2, it gave me 0. Are you able to follow me?
Okay, sir. Got it. Got it.
So when I'm trying to get the column value 1, right, for the result set 1, what is the column value 1? This is nothing but, if you look at this, yeah, it's done already. 41 results, I got it. I have now all the employee numbers. Select star from EMP, query ID, number of rows updated 12, and all this stuff. Okay. So I think we'll take a break. We'll catch tomorrow morning. There is no class. Tomorrow evening there is a class at 5 o'clock. I'll wrap up these procedures. There are 3 to 4, 4 5 scenarios that I have to show you. And once that is done, then we are good with the batch. Okay. So there is, I have some personal work in the morning tomorrow, so I cannot. Basically, I can accommodate you guys in the morning. So afternoon 5 o'clock we'll have a 5 o'clock class, and then I'll go close up with the procedures. Okay. Okay, guys.
Okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.